Good morning, everybody. G'day. Welcome to the Medicine Beyond seminar. My name's Jane Andrews. I'm a bioresonance therapist and supernoetics pilot. I'm from Brisbane, Australia. It's lovely to see you all here today. It's going to be a fantastic seminar. I've actually attended the seminar a couple of years ago. That's when I first met Dr. Keith. The supernoetics course that I did has done wonders for my business. I've learned so much and I'm so excited because I know how much you guys are going to learn and love this today. There's a lot in store. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. There are bathrooms down the hallway. For people that need their Starbucks fix, I've heard there is a Starbucks in the casino. But we do have some coffee and tea ready for you at morning tea time when we have a break. That will be at 10:45. We'll have half an hour. And we're having a break at 1 o'clock for lunch. That'll be a break for an hour. There's restaurant facilities in the casino. We're going to have a tea break at 3 o'clock this afternoon for 45 minutes. And then the day formally ends at 5:30, but there is more in store. There's a workshop at 6 p.m. and the day will formally end at 8 o'clock tonight. Now, Dr. Keith really doesn't need much introduction. You've all read his books. We all know and love him. I just want to let you know that he has put so much wonderful work in. There is so many wonderful, exciting experiments to see, information to learn. There's books up the back for purchase if anybody's interested. We've got some vendors here selling some wonderful products. Go and say g'day, introduce yourselves. I really think that the main message I want to give you today is that this wonderful information that you'll be learning today, it's relevant for everybody in their lives, no matter what you're doing. And particularly if you're a practitioner, it's just a fantastic way of increasing your business, being more knowledgeable, giving really great customer service for your clients. It's all good. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Keith.
Right. Now, I know a lot of you have been excited to meet me. I've got bad news for you. I'm not here. This is an avatar. I'm on the beach in Waikiki having a good time. Technology's almost there, actually. Those who've read Medicine Beyond will know we're just about at the stage of being able to live with avatars. They certainly scientifically prove the story. Right, hands up. Who is a brain? Anyone in this room that's a brain? No. Oh, somebody. One person wants to claim they're a brain. Okay. I think the rest of us don't like that model. I think we like to think that we're a bit bigger than just a blob of jelly inside the skull. And that the whole phenomenon of what we call the extended mind really shows that we're very non-physical, non-material. Memory and thought, I think, is non-material. And where modern science is going wrong is that they think everything can be explained by this little piece of splat inside the skull, and it just can't, frankly. It can't. They believe that we're conscious because we have experiences. And the truth is, we have experiences because we're conscious, right? But that doesn't mean the brain is a bunch of junk and we don't need it. It's kind of a switchboard, interface, a connection, if you like, with the physical. And if things go wrong with the brain, it can influence how we think and feel. Although those of you, how many people in this room have had an out-of-body experience? Several of you have seen your body from a distance. You'll know that you don't really need a brain or eyes to see things or think, that you can do it without the physical. For those of you, by the way, who are skeptical, maybe nobody in this room did the experiment, but there are plenty of experiments being done when someone's out of body, they're describing something very accurately down to the last detail, which was checked with a chronometer, and everything was exactly as they say it was, except they were several miles away. So, you can take it as a given, but even if you don't believe in those things, some people do. So you need to understand the model. Anyway, this morning we're going to kick off. The reason I start with this particular topic, we're going to do enhancing brain function and brain waves, is because we have some wonderful equipment here for you to try. There's all sorts of little electronic toys actually here, but one of the stars of the show is specifically referred to in this first presentation. You will no doubt be intrigued and probably want to try it. So I put this talk first, so that if you like the idea, then you go and get yourself on a list and book yourself in for a trial or a test session. Okay, does that sound good? Right, so we're going to talk about brain entrainment and control and enhancement of brain waves. I'm sure you've all heard of binaural beats. That's been around for years now, 20, 30 years. Nothing new there, but there is much new technology now to enhance that. And I'm going to talk about what I call multimedia sensory stimulation, meaning more than just the sound. There's visuals as well, and there's voice and creative visual. It's a whole enhancing experience, which I'll share with you as we go along. Okay, now, brainwave, first of all, I have to clarify what I mean by brainwave entrainment. There's getting the brain to follow some kind of frequency that you're feeding to it, okay? That's entrainment. And then, Susie, you distracted me, but thank you. She says I'm in her way. I'll stand back here. But there's also integration of the two halves of the brain, and these are slightly different topics. We'll be coming for that. But brainwave entrainment, as I said, been around 30 years, lots of science. This is not woo-woo. Plenty of good, solid science showing it's great for all kinds of things. Creative thinking, learning, even PMS, migraines. How many men suffer from premenstrual tension? No? Oh, I suffered plenty. That's one of my old jokes, that. But anyway, it's good for stress, good for learning, good for out-of-body experiences. Do you remember Robert Monroe, the pioneer in that area, was very famous for using binaural beats to basically blow people out their skull and down the street as disembodied spirits. And he got certainly some extremely good results. I've combed a lot of databases for some of the science that you're going to be seeing today. Again, like in my book, Medicine Beyond, I want to emphasize over and over where there's good, solid science. Some of the ideas are completely strange, and conventional scientists and doctors just can't hack it. They say, well, it can't be true, and therefore it isn't. But that's just because they won't look at the existing science. There's plenty of it, so trust me. And I've always considered it my mission to round up the science that surrounds these strange ideas. And somewhere along, well, I'll start now, but I'll probably end up repeating myself several times. But my friend Cyril Smith in Salford in England used to have a saying. He says, and he was a physicist and an electronics engineer at the University of Salford, used to say regularly that advanced physics doesn't just say that these strange things could happen, it says that all these strange things must happen. Like, survival after death, for example. You can't not survive as an energy field and an information field because that's physics. Life after death in that sense is pure physics, and yet they still can't hack it. Anyway, lots of good things, as I said, headaches, improving learning speed, improving memory. There's all sorts of neurotransmitters that we're going to look at that change and improve. Lowering stress, of course, is one of the signal factors in living longer in this day and age. Stress remains the number one killer, basically. So anything that can calm you down and soothe you has got to be good. Enabling sound sleep is another great anti-aging vehicle. You need to have good quality stage 3 and 4 sleep if you're going to push back the boundaries of aging. Sorry, I should have pointed it this way. Okay, this is a joke. Rosie's husband, I think she's still outside at the desk. Anyway, her husband did this for me. I was sat on the end of a sofa. And so he took the sofa away. It looks like I'm levitating. After 30 years of meditation, you can, well, I don't know how many of them can or claim to levitate. I would never trust a video I think I saw on YouTube. But there are well-documented accounts of levitation, and certainly a good friend of mine in London had it as a startling spiritual emergency. You know, she called in a doctor, Dr. John Briffer, who's a well-known, well-respected newspaper journalist doctor. He's a regular family doctor, but publishes in the news. Apparently was sitting on her at one point because she kept rising up off the bed. I accept a smattering of these stories. I don't see why not. And historically, there are plenty of documented stories like that. Once you've got a model that says, well, you know, that's probably going to happen from time to time, then it's not a worry. If you think everything is totally physical and all phenomena of the mind are in the brain, then of course you are going to be struggling a bit. But this technology I'm going to be describing to you is very powerful, very transformational, and it's very quick. In 7 minutes, this has been documented, you can get the same brainwave changes that you'd get from skilled meditators who've spent 30 years learning how to do it. Well, I don't know how many in this room have got 30 years left, but a few haven't, certainly. But I mean, who's got the patience anymore for 30 years? Never mind. Whether you live 30 years or not. Everything's in a rush now, isn't it? So if you can do it in 7 minutes, instead, you know, all you do is put the kit on, switch it on. You don't even need to learn it. It will do it for you, as you will see. Anyway, its story goes back principally to about the in fact, its story goes right back to ancient Greek times, as I'll be sharing with you. But the technological part goes back to the 1980s. It's really thanks to Sony and Panasonic that we can do this stuff. You know, they invented stereo personal recording sets where you could put separate sounds into the right and left ear. So it's a very modern thing. Before, I mean, thank goodness for Sony and Panasonic. Anyway, Gene Brokop was the first person that published significantly, and he had what's now a famous paper in Scientific American, not this one, but he made this point: you can dig up all sorts of buried and lost memory using this technology, which is great for learning and students. I'll be sharing that with you later. But that was the beginning in binaural beats. Now, I've got more to offer you. As I said, I call it multimedia sensory stimulation, and there are 4 aspects to it. First of all, binaural beats. As we said, I'll tell you what those are in a minute. Photic driving, sometimes called flicker following, which means flashing lights, flashing at, say, an alpha brainwave frequency. Even without the binaural beats, a person will start to generate alpha waves and start to cool and calm and chill. Yeah? We add some voice imagery. Now, I've done some tracks that I call Mind Journeys, and I take you off to places like Avalon and Atlantis and traveling the universe beyond the sun and beyond the galaxy. That's what we mean by voice imagery. Quite poetic, I think. Anyway, certainly people seem to like my tracks. But coupled with slow, meditative kind of music. Again, certain musical characteristics that I'll discuss. So all these 4 are together, right? So you put a device on your head, which will produce flickering lights, will produce binaural beats in the ear. You're listening to calm, tranquil, beautiful music, and somebody telling you some really cool things that you can do with your thoughts while you're going under, as it were. As I said, lots of benefits. I mean, I could do 3 slides full of benefits. Weight loss is a good one. Stress busting, I already mentioned, but it's great for breaking addictions. That has a known, really known value. It's very important. Improves sexual prowess. Well, I've got to say that because a number of people in the room ask me about that on a regular basis. But you can be more creative. If you're an artist or artistic, or you're a writer, or you do poetry, or compose music, whack a set of this kit on and have half an hour with it. You'll find you come out like a Beethoven or a Picasso, Kids love it, and it calms kids because their brain is all over the place with ADD and ADHD, physiologically speaking. So it's one of the great ways to help kiddies with that problem. Improve moods of all kinds. If you're feeling depressed and unhappy with yourself, it'll certainly cheer you up. It will lower blood pressure. It's great for learning a language. You can tune your brain and then go learn the language, or even cleverer, you can have language learning tapes with the binaural beats and music backing for it. It's good for just changing all sorts of dysfunctional patterns, but it's good for pain relief. I've done a track which I've not actually released yet, but it's about white light. White light in the brain, or in the mind, I should say, white light in the brain and mind is incompatible with pain. You can't have both in your mind. So if you can get the white light going, the pain will go away. And great for cancer, whether or not the person needs to relax and chill, and that's part of their therapy, or whether it's really got to the point where the person is now terminal. It's a great way to exit in beautiful calm and peace instead of fear and anxiety. And also, by the way, we do use these kind of therapies for the carers. We all feel a lot for cancer sufferers and feel sad for them, but the carers need a break too. They suffer horribly often. Sometimes they have more than one case. If it's a family carer, there may only be one, but professional carers might see people dying all the time of this disease, and we need to look after them too. So caring for the carers, another great use of that. Okay, let's talk about the mechanics and the technology now. This is a Dutchman called Christian Huygens, and he noticed a very strange thing. He published it back in 1656. If you wound a bunch of clocks up in a room, they'd all start to synchronize. Susie, yes? Oh no! Oh lordy! I can hear it now. Yeah, of course. I'm so intent on what I'm saying. That's certainly. Yeah, Patricia, can we try turning it up first? This is a grotesque noise. Thanks for calling it to my attention, because, to be honest, I was so engrossed in being the speaker. I don't know if I can do it from here. Too much bass? Shall I? I don't want to lose too much of the schedule. It might take a good while to get this noise reduced. If I speak up like this, will it help? Yes. I am anxious about that because I'm carrying most of the weight for the next 2 days. I don't want to lose my voice by the middle of this afternoon. I will do my best. Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know how is it that nobody thought this through? I'm sure we can't be the only group audience here that's suffering from that infernal racket. Got to be a bit cross. I am a bit cross. Anyway, let me carry on with. I think I said it anyway, but you perhaps didn't hear it. That clocks will mysteriously, and nobody's got a good explanation, they will mysteriously start to synchronize. Now, it's not like the girls' school thing where all the girls start to, or tend to menstruate at the same time. That's got clear biological rhythms that point to that happening. But why clocks should do it, unless clocks are thinking creatures, could be. Anyway, so we're talking about hemispheric integration as well. That's integrating right and left brain. I shan't dwell much on the model, on the assumption you all know it, but basically the left side is said to be masculine, although I consider myself quite a right-brained man. I write poetry and write music, and I've had many out-of-body spiritual experiences and so on, so it's not all down to you girls, But there is certainly linearity, logic, verbalism, all those things on the left side, and there's, all the creative, spatial kind of concepts on the right. There's a slight problem with this model, which I shall go into on another talk I'm doing, but I'll give you a hint, right, which is today it seems to become established that the right brain is the way to go, calm, lovely, feminine, beautiful. The trouble is the right side of the brain is where all the crap is. You know, all the emotional storm and disturbance and the very unpleasant experiences that go to color our lives and make them uncomfortable at times. The trouble is the right brain is not very clever or logical. It's creative and, you know, very vivid, but it's not so logical, so it can't explain why it feels that way. So the left brain is needed. So the left brain comes up with this story of why you're frightened of, you know, cats, say, or something like that. It's a creation by the left brain. The left brain can tell lies. It can tell this story that's a load of baloney to make sense. It's called cognitive dissonance, when things don't make sense, but the left brain will invent something that tries to make sense out of it. But the right brain is where the trouble is stored. So do remember that. It's not all sweetness and light, rainbows and butterflies on the right brain, right? But integrating the two, of course, is what we want. As in everything, balance is the key. We don't want feminine, we don't want masculine, we want both. We're human beings. Okay, so this right brain, left brain idea was originally researched by this man called Roger Sperry. He got a Nobel Prize for it. But he didn't research it on whole brains. He researched it on damaged brains where they chopped the middle of the brain in half. A thing called the corpus callosum, which joins the two halves. And that's part of our integrated function. So from the first, his studies were basically flawed. And what I can tell you now, we know now with modern functional MRI scans, is that when somebody thinks a very clear left brain thought, both sides light up. And when somebody thinks a very clear, creative right brain thought, both sides light up. So don't be completely drawn into that story. There is clearly a type of thinking, you know, there's a linear, logical type of thinking, and there's a spatial, creative, emotional type of thinking, but they're not quite so clear-cut as you would think, right? Didn't I just say that? Isn't that the same slide? I think it is, yeah. Oh, okay. Apologies. Anyway, so this Gerald Oster was one of the people that got the... I'm going to do binaurals first, okay? Back in 1973, he introduced the term for us, binaural... Oh, yes, now let me tell you what a beat is. A binaural beat comes about because you play into the right ear and left ear two different frequencies. And the beat is the difference between the frequencies. So as in this example, 444 cycles per second. I think that's middle A, isn't it? Anyone orchestral here? You know the note they tune the violins to? I think it's either 440 or 444 anyway. But if you play 440 in one ear and 444 in the other ear, what the brain hears is the difference, 4 beats, right? And I usually try and illustrate this. When when people are tuning in the orchestra and playing with it, what they're actually listening for is beats, and they're listening for the beats going away. So they might play a note, and there'll be a wobble on the notes, as they will be able to hear it. Most people are not trained, so they don't hear that wobbly noise. But what they do is tune the string until gradually it slows down, and then the wobble will disappear, right? So it will go whoa, yo, 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 yo. That means the both notes are now exactly the same pitch. There's no wobble or no beats. Okay? Did you get that concept from that illustration? Good, because that's crucial. And you can choose how many beats. You see, you just separate the frequencies by as much as you want. If you want to do alpha, that's about 10 beats per second. Then you just make one 444 and the other one 434, and so on. The brain will tune in to the beats, and the brain itself will start to resonate at that frequency. And that's what we mean by entrainment. It will copy or follow the beats. I can't even explain why. It doesn't do the 440, it just doesn't try. It says, I'll do the beats, and tunes itself into the difference between the two. So you see, really, you'll understand now what I was saying about Sony and Panasonic. It wasn't possible until modern stereophonic personal equipment that has different capabilities in each ear. You know, you can't just have a device like a radio or a gramophone playing the sound. It won't work because both ears will hear both sounds. Okay, so as I said, I want to make sure you understand the two terms. Entrainment means making the brain follow the beats or the frequency, and integration or synchrony means making both halves do the same thing. Now, the magic about this technology is the brain can't help itself. If you put it in a position of listening to beats and seeing the flickering lights, the entire brain will start producing lots of theta waves or lots of alpha waves or whatever it is that you're doing. This is a whole new thing in nature. Mother Nature didn't have this. Sony thought it up. Well, Sony gave us the possibility, and then some very smart researchers. Oh, it's gone. They've obviously gone and shut them up, or at least quieted them down, thank goodness. Okay. So, as I say, something totally new. All right, well, I already mentioned Robert Monroe, famously so I won't dwell on it, but he's very famous for, in fact, it's called the Monroe Institute, and people go there and sit on beds, and their intention is to travel outside the body, to go off into the astral and things and whatever you call it. As I said, there's been plenty of backup work done to verify what people said they saw, and you've either got to come up with some very strange, distorted explanation, or the simple explanation is true, which is that they were where they say they were, watching what they said they saw. To me, that's the simplest explanation. And since I know I'm not a physical brain mind, I've got no problem with the fact that nobody else is either, necessarily. Okay, so, I think I made that point. It's all over the brain, so it really is wonderful tuning for the brain. There's been lots of EEG monitorings and all those things done showing that you can. I think I perhaps ought to go and explain the waves, shall I? Let's do this first because I'm using words like sleep and so on. For those of you that don't know, typically the wide awake frequencies we call beta, and those are 15, 25 hertz. Above that it gets to high beta, and if you start at 35, 40 hertz, that's cycles per second, that person would be very agitated, like they've been on coffee all day and they're twitching. It worries me no end living in America, especially in Nevada, where I'm told that 70% of people carry a gun, and you see them going around with 32-ounce cups of coffee. They're practically shaking and twitching before, and they've got a gun in their pocket. You wonder just how dangerous this caffeine twitchiness is. However, there's a mystery. Tibetan monks and Buddhist monks, and seriously good meditators get themselves into these divine transcendent states while they're being monitored with EEGs. EEG stands for electroencephalogram, or a brainwave connection. And it's rather strange. They can get frequencies up to 50, 60 hertz, even when they're completely chilled out and they're sort of gone to all intents and purposes, off in paradise or wherever they are. They've got these almost beta wave storms, not explained. But anyway, for the rest of us, high beta means you'd be like this, you're way over the edge. Functional beta is at about 15 to 25. Once we drop below the beta frequencies, we call that alpha. It's sort of, in this range, 10, 8 plus. When I say 8, really we should go down to Schumann waves at 7.8 hertz. Okay, so it should really 7.5, I guess. Probably be a better description. But alpha is when a person is relaxed and looking inwardly, they're aware of themselves, but they're also aware of the outside environment. A nice relaxed state. When I was a doctor ever so many years ago doing night work, and up all night and racing about with emergencies, I used to just go and lie on the sofa for about 20 minutes of alpha. And honestly, that would restore me enough to be able to work for another 3 or 4 hours without sleep. Very useful. Joe Silver has invented a whole system based on alpha, learning to tune your brain to alpha, being able to do it voluntarily. Theta is the magic state, and I do mean magic, where strange, magical, transformative, transcendental things can happen. Theta is quite slow, 3 to 7 hertz, and that's the frequency of trance or meditation states. The person is still conscious, so if you went and shook them, they would respond, say, what? But otherwise, they're pretty well out of it. They're in sort of dreamland, if you like. And that's where most of the creative power comes from. Now, I don't know if any of you or all of you know the shamanic model, but probably you know that simple tribal ceremonies often include a drum beat, right? Something like this. right? That's theta frequency. So if somebody sits near you and drums like that for a half hour, you'll have the whole tribe gone. They're all in a strange trance, and they're all going to hallucinate the same things at the same time, or whatever it is going on, whatever their model is. But anyway, so you can induce it with drums like that. That's not binaural, of course. Both ears are hearing the same thing. But you can drum at a speed that's sufficiently fast to create theta states. Delta is when we're fast asleep or unconscious, and therefore, of course, pain-free as well. So delta is very good anti-pain. Very slow, 1 to 2, just a little bit above 2 hertz per second. Okay, so these are the devices you're going to see. There's a great device at the back that I want you to try. Oh, and by the way, we'll partly prove some of this hypothesis. You can have a heart rate variability test. You'll get a chart or a graph of that showing you all know heart rate variability. Yeah? It's one of the quickest, slickest tests we've got of stress and overload. You need to have a variable heartbeat that responds biologically. If it's fixed and rigid, that's dangerous. You can do 20 minutes on the machine and then do another heart rate variability test, and you will see on the computer screen, on the display, on the printout that it's improved. It's really quite magic. Alpha is very useful, as I said. Silver, mind control, for example, great for lowering stress and learning, peaceful and calm. But theta, as I said, is the deep one, right? If you can get a person down to theta states, it feels wonderful, and the person becomes very much more aware of their transcendental, non-material nature, if you like. And as I said, from Robert Monroe's work, we learned early on that people do go out of the body. So just more good things. Look, I can list them, but creativity, problem solving, improved memory, so that's great for learning a language. Kids should do this. I'm going to show you an example later in this presentation of people who are able to learn 1,000 new foreign language words in a day and remember 80-odd% of them 2 years later. So it certainly enhances learning. There's no question that. It can be, the creativity can be it depends what you do in life, of course, but the creativity can be very valuable. I don't think it would suit an accountant to be in theta. He'd be better to be in high beta. But, anyone with any artistic or creative things, and that includes businessmen and entrepreneurs, of course, who need to be highly creative. How people describe themselves varies, as it says, but really they're remarkably consistent findings. Okay, I think I'll just speed up a bit. So this is just some quotes from different workers in the field that I've collected over the years. Have you heard of, do you know, what's his name? The man that talked about peak experiences. Abraham Maslow's peak experiences, where you spread out like an ocean and feel that you're mixed in with and involved in all of humanity, and that all-in-one kind of feeling. It tends to take you to that sort of state. Not always and all the time. It depends on your state of mind. It depends on exactly what device you're using and so on. But there's some wonderful experiences to be had. And if someone's tipping you off with a good story, let's pretend we're at Avalon and seeing the Knights of the Round Table and so on, then it becomes even more creative. Oh yeah, this is the thing about the peak states. That's what Abraham Maslow called them. He was one of the very few psychologists, and certainly the major psychologist in history, who ever took the trouble to study what is the best that humans can be. Most psychologists, and that shame and disgrace on the medical profession called psychiatry, just study screwed up people, and they don't make much sense out of that either. Or they study averages. And it was Maslow thought, well, why don't we just see what is the best that people can be? So he interviewed some amazing people and studied, what they'd got and what they were able to do. So these, the brainwave entrainment things can create these amazing peak experiences from time to time. Oh yes, I mentioned study. Let me spend a minute then on Georgy Lozanov. He developed a subject he calls suggestology. If you ever read Super Learning, that book, she spent a whole chapter on him. But he used to do this, essentially, he was using alpha waves, which are good for relaxation. He was using things like peripheral vision. Famously, he used what's called slow Baroque music. You know, like Vivaldi and Bach, but the slow movements. And it's calm, soothing, and beautiful music. And he had a few other sort of study techniques, but basically when he threw it all together, he got this amazing mix called suggestology, or suggestopedy was the study part. And people were, as I said, able to learn 1,000 foreign language words in a day, and of course everybody said, so what? You know, they'd just forget it, wouldn't they? But no, they didn't, actually. Their score was very high after a test, and it was 81% after 22 months. So that's what we call learning. They really, really did learn. So, you know, there's a message there for kids, isn't there? You know, why aren't we doing that for our kids in school? It would make their lives a lot less stressful. Anyway, as I said, this slow Baroque music is now very characteristic in quality. It's been well studied. You've probably heard of the Mozart Effect. That's a higher frequency in the beta range. In fact, it's been said that a couple of his piano concertos is like having 2 cups of coffee in the morning. And probably is. Okay, now let's talk about photic driving. That's enough on binaural beats for the moment. This man, back in the 40s, took a look at it. It goes back further. I will show you in a minute. There's a good history for this. But using flickering lights, which you can either use spinning mirrors or flashing bulbs, the various ways of doing the flickering light thing, will also put the brain into entrainment. If you flicker a light at 4 cycles per second, the person will go into a theta state. And I'll show you a familiar example of that in a minute. Anyway, so it's been called flicker following. Photic driving is probably the posh correct term these days. But it goes back a long way, look. Looking through spinning spoked wheels, people often do have transformations. And Ptolemy, right back in ancient, well, not ancient Greece, but, you know, in fact, he was Alexandria, wasn't he, the Ptolemies? So, sorry, my geography's out there. But anyway, back in those times, people were able to change their mind states. Sometimes it happened by accident, other times it was a deliberate process that they used in a temple to either get a transformational experience or get a message from beyond. One of my favorite figures in the medical profession is a French psychiatrist called Pierre Janet, a gifted, beautiful, compassionate, wonderful, humane man who, you know, was a person to admire, basically. But he worked at the Pitié de Salpêtrière in Paris, which was the spin bin, you know, where all the sad people went that were considered mad. And he studied them and discovered a huge amount. He was the man that invented the word subconscious, the subconscious mind. But he was able to help people by just spinning a wheel with holes in it in front of a kerosene lamp and get people to calm, you know, because mostly what's wrong with people like bipolars who are in a manic state, they're just in high beta and they can't control themselves. Their brain is just going, whoa, 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 whoa. And you need to calm them down. And he found he could do that. So there you go. This is a nice home example of the same phenomenon. I know most of us don't have flickering fires anymore. But, you know, I was raised in a time when you did log fires. Maybe even if you don't have them at home, you go camping sometimes with your kids. You notice this effect of, you know, the flickering flames, and they make you sleepy and make you drowsy, right? And I have to say to people, it's not carbon monoxide poisoning, because it happens outdoors too. The fact is that a blazing fire with flickering flames like that is very typically theta frequency and will entrain you, whether you want it to or not. In fact, you've been entrained, I should think, many times without having realized that's what was going on. But if you've ever felt sleepy or drowsy in front of a log fire, that's it. Okay, so we'll do some more science. I mean, there's just lots of these things, as I said, backed up over and over with study. I've got Norman Shealy going to speak with us tomorrow afternoon, a friend of mine, and he did a whole scientific study with way over 5,000 patients, showing exactly the same thing. You know, it's a given, it's a proven. It's not woo-woo anymore. Let's talk a minute then about what I call cranial pharmacy, you know, switching on different neurotransmitters. You can get more serotonin, more dopamine, you know, the calming, happy ones that make you feel good and make you feel balanced within yourself. Catecholamines, acetylcholine and things like that are absolutely vital for learning. There are measurable increases of these biological parameters when you do it. Again, there is no arguing. It just happens. What's this lady saying? Oh yes, just again, it's another study group that worked in Surrey in England, showing much increased production of these important neurotransmitters. Acetylcholine is one of the most important for memory and intelligence. In fact, if you're very deficient in it, you have a lot of trouble. One of the big problems with Alzheimer's, certainly, is not enough memory retention. The people that are chronically deficient in acetylcholine. So I can't quite say this will cure Alzheimer's, but you know, in every logical sense, if you've got a loved one that's suffering, you should try them on one of these devices and just see how much it helps, basically. Also, it's brain size. Acetylcholine, Alzheimer's, the brain tends to shrink. Acetylcholine in sufficient quantity, the brains tend to be larger. So it's all, it's well documented. We're talking about the relaxation response now, the opposite of the flight and fight mode, where, a person feels calm, feels good about themselves and so on. Very, very healing, very therapeutic, blood pressure, heart rate, all those good things. I keep saying these over and over. I just want you to, really hammer it home that biologically and physiologically it's good. It's not just how you feel about yourself. Improves hormones as well, very good at lowering cortisol. Cortisol is the main killer hormone, right? I don't know if you know this, but the salmon runs in the Pacific Northwest. The salmon swim upstream against the current and they reproduce and then they just sort of roll over and die. That's because they've got about 3,000 times the normal cortisol levels in their body, and it just accelerates their life down to a matter of days and they die. So that's a very graphic demonstration of why we do not like cortisol in our bodies at any level, or certainly not for very long. DHEA, the mother hormone, is part of so many other hormones. It's valuable, we need it. And melatonin, of course, puts you to sleep. That's part of the successful sleep forming. Let me move on, because I've got a feeling we're running a bit short of time. As I say, DHEA, the mother hormone, so the more you've got of that, the more you can patch up anything else that's a bit deficient. Restful sleep and rejuvenation is critical, but it's not all night long. I don't want to go into sleep science, but basically stage 3 and stage 4, or the Americans call it deep sleep stage. They just lump 3 and 4 together. The rest of the world uses 3 and 4. It's just called the deep sleep stage in the USA. Again, science measures numbers. I don't think we need to dwell on the numbers, but large percent, way beyond what you'd expect by chance, and certainly way beyond what you can get from pharmacology or drugs. People improve their physiological states. Sometimes, really quite astonishing so. Okay, so we're now coming towards the build-up where we sort of assemble all the bits, if you like. So I call it multimedia sensory stimulation. And it's slow music, creative voice patterning, binaural beats, and photic driving. We have a device at the back called a brain tap, which I want you to go and see and go and try. By the way, let me just make this point generally. I've got some friends here. They are friends. They're not just sponsors. All of them. I've been at their house, or they've stayed at my house, and so on. They're here because they're friends. So just go and say hello and see their equipment and try them, because they very kindly came along to support me in the very first Medicine Beyond seminar here. If you go and find Patrick and Cynthia at the back, they will do something, they put you on one of the devices to help. If any of you heard of the Casino, which I've written about many times, and you don't want to let that go, you'd rather just sort of see what that was like. There are some here, but go and try the brain tap. That's the one I reckon. I'll tell you what I love about it, which is that it works from a cell phone. You don't need a device plus goggles plus headphones. You just have a sort of helmet type thing. You just plug it in your cell phone. There's an app, and you just choose the tracks that you want from the app. It's just a sign of the times, isn't it, the way technology is advancing. Okay, so, that is the Casino, so we better move on beyond that. Okay. Well, actually, I think that's probably all I want to say about that. I'm going to switch over and show you something else in a minute. But does anyone have any questions about this kind of technology? Susie? I've not heard the migraines thing. I mean, almost anything can cause migraines if you're sensitive. You're not thinking of fits and seizures, are you? Because we know that fits and seizures can be caused by flickering lights at the wrong level, typically at beta. If a person has any history or any concern, it's really quite simple. I've never found it in 2 decades, any trouble with starting it off almost dark, so they can't hardly see anything, and then just gradually turn it up over the space of about 15 minutes. And I've just never had anyone encounter trouble like that, and I don't know of anyone who has. I don't know who's next. I'll take you. Yes. I was just saying that. Were you not listening? I said flickering lights are known to set off seizures, but if you start it dark and turn up the intensity of the light gradually over the space of 10 or 15 minutes, then the person is well able to tolerate it, even if they have a known history of seizures. But the seizures typically are triggered by the higher frequencies, the beta frequencies, not theta. So as long as they're down in the theta range, they're good. Yeah. Yes?
I can address the issue of flicker and headache. Significantly fluorescent lighting is a constant flicker. And some people are troubled when they work environment under fluorescent fixtures every day. So that's a known quantity. And here's where your headaches.
Right, but that's not the flicker. I mean, they do flicker, but it's not the flicker that does it, because other flickers doesn't do it. That's the fluorescent tube, and that particular kind of EMF frequency is quite notorious for causing things like, tight building syndrome and office, the bad building syndrome. What's it called? Sick building syndrome. Fluorescent lighting is a known risk, I accept that, but I don't think that the flickering is the part of it. It's the electrical craze, it's dirty electricity that comes spilling out of those things. And in fact, if you get a field meter, I should bring in a field meter later and show you one. You can stand above, if you're in an upper room, you can stand above the fluorescent lighting in the room below, and even up to about knee height, you can pick up the radiation from a fluorescent tube. And similarly, if you're under the fluorescent tube, you can pick up the radiation down to about shoulder level. So it's definitely drenching the brain of most people. Bad story. But we're not doing geopathic stress and EMF radiation this time. Okay, well listen, I want to, how are we for time? Oh, that's pretty good actually. I want to share my little operatic star with you before we go on. And that's my singing plant. Maybe I should say a word about consciousness, okay? I mean, the question is going to be, and you can all answer it for yourself, I'm not going to be authoritative about it, but is a plant conscious? There is no question that plants can perceive things. That's been done, okay? I've got slides of me with somewhere in this series with Cleve Baxter, who did a series of pioneering experiments back in the 60s and showed that plants not only reacted to people touching them or hurting them with leaves, ripping off leaves, but they were actually able to identify who did it. When that person came back in the room, the plants, they were wired to a meter. The plants would go crazy when the cruel or hurtful person came into the room. And it was found that they could detect people being hurt in another part of the building. So there's no question they have perception. The problem with that story is they don't have any brains and they don't have any nervous system. So how do they do it? Yeah, well, it's back to what I said at the beginning, really. The brain and the nervous system is really very little to do with what you think it has. People look through their eyes because they are supposed to. Like when you're a kid and you don't, it pretty soon gets knocked out of you. That's stupid. Well, it's just imagination. You're just dreaming it. And so the child comes to grow up and learn that you're looking through your eyes. But you're not. People, there are very gifted people where you can blindfold them and they know exactly what's going on, or even in the next room. So Cleve Baxter called that primary perception for plants. I use the term non-sensory perception in my writings because we're not using sense organs necessarily. And so this friendly little plant is going to prove at least part of my hypothesis, which is that you don't need a brain and nervous system to be aware of what's going on out around you. The question is, does that mean a plant's conscious? You'll be very interested to watch it and listen to it and see what you think. As I said, science tends to think that we're conscious because we have experiences, and to me that is totally wrong. In chapter 6 of Medicine Beyond, I went into the whole concept of creation from top down, i.e. consciousness begins it all. And really, we are having experiences because we're conscious, not the other way around. The problem with consciousness is you can't study it. It's like a knife that you can't cut. A knife can't cut itself, and consciousness cannot see itself. It just is. In fact, consciousness is probably the only absolute in the universe. It either is or it isn't. Everything else is relative to that. Anyway, let's see if she'll perform for us. A couple of years ago, Vivian and I went to northern Italy. Well, we went to all over Europe. We had a wonderful summer. Summer of love, we call it. We went everywhere, from the far north of Scotland right down south in south of France, Italy. And we went to a community there called Damanhur. Anyone here heard of Damanhur? None of you? Oh, just once. Just Susie. Two. Oh, okay. I thought they might have made themselves a little bit more known. I'll spend a minute then. They're up in the mountains in northern Italy, not far from Turin. They're a kind of a commune. It's not a big group. I think their membership worldwide is only about 1,000 members. And they do some totally weird stuff, I've got to tell you. I'm not into everything they do or everything they think. But they do some marvelous experiments. And one of the ones you can find on the internet is, if you make a note of these keywords, you can go and look it up. It's called the Singing Trees of Damanhur. Do it in your spare time, not when I'm talking, please. Damanhur is Damanhur. Damanhur. The Singing Trees of Damanhur. And for many years, they've had trees in the forest nearby wired up to electronic devices that enable the plants to produce music. Now, I've got to emphasize, and I'm going to show you this, I've got a device here, which I bought from Damanhur. It does not produce music. If I'll hold the electrodes and show you, it doesn't do anything. The plant interacts with it and learns quite quickly how to make noises, and then the plant will very quickly, from that moment, learn to make quite pleasant phrases. We limit it. Well, I can give it a chromatic scale, but I usually limit it to an ordinary diatonic 8-note scale. So it's only got those 8 notes to play with. But it listens to itself and will evolve. And once I've switched it on, I'll leave it on. And you'll see that it actually changes through time. Typically, they take a little while to learn. But this one was a brilliant singer. We plugged her in for the first... Where's Jane? Was it yesterday, Jane, the first time? No, it was the day before, wasn't it? No, it was yesterday. Yeah, so we plugged her in. Off she went like an operatic star. No stopping her. So just give me a moment to wire it up. I'm hoping, thank goodness the sound has died there, that you're going to be able to hear it through these loudspeakers. If not, don't worry, it'll be here tomorrow, and I'll play it through. Tomorrow we're going to have an extra sound system where I can play my computer sound through the PA like my microphone is. But you will hear the sound, and by all means come on over when we have the break. Okay. Where did I put my glasses? I need them. Oh, there we go. So I don't want to hurt her when for some reason we always call the plant she. I don't know why. It's just something we do, I guess. But I don't want to hurt her by putting the clamps on, so let me just concentrate on being gentle. There's a circuit here. And part of the circuit is a metal rod that goes down into the soil near the roots. And then the circuit is closed by attaching a clamp, just a simple flat, there's no teeth, it's not a crocodile clip, it's just a flat clamp to one of the leaves, and that completes the circuit. So I hope she's not sulky with a big audience. You think that sounds strange, but I've had plants react to the voice and to sounds. I was showing an apple tree up in Reno to somebody. It was singing beautifully, but I said a very rude swear word and it stopped just like that. It took me about 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get the thing talking again and singing. And then I accidentally used a really bad, the F word, and it stopped dead, and I couldn't get it going for the rest of the day. It was like, if you're going to talk to me like that, I'm out of here. So maybe I'll talk on until she gets it. Now, if I turn it right up. Sorry. Try not to brush on plants if you can, because they do feel it. Is that fascinating? Now, it's a slow start. She'll get melodic as she gradually learns. Listening, she can hear her own sound through the loudspeakers. And what seems to happen is the plants tune it, literally. They hear something that they think is nice, and they like it. So they keep going back to that phrase. And some of the runs are really quite long once they get the hang of it. There's a whole musical phrase. And already I know some people have been composing music to go with, plant rhythms and plant phrases. But anyway, let's, while we wait for her to get... Can you hear at the back? I'm not sure if you could even hear at the back. You can? Oh, all right, good. And of course, by all means, in the break, come round and say hello. Actually, I'm not sure if one other setting. Oh no, it's on the major scale. It's just playing funny notes. So any more questions about singing plants or consciousness as we come into the break? We okay? We're good. All right, well, yes. I've not tried, by logic, I suppose you mean, is there some hidden language in there? Is she speaking to us? The answer is I don't know. Nobody's getting it if they are actually speaking. But certainly there's musical phrases that people can use and work with. I've just thought, have I actually finished what I'm saying, what I'm doing? Yes, I have. That's the end. Okay. I've got to tell you, she's a little bit slow, but then, in front of a mob, I think I might be shy, don't you? Yes, sir.
Has anybody tried to record a plant that has been modified, or it's a hybrid? Is there any difference?
I don't think anyone that I know of has correlated it with the botany, no. We just pick a plant we like that looks pretty. This one was chosen with a little bit of woo, Ooh, oh, that's a good one. So one of our gifted ladies came back with this one. As I said, she started to sing immediately. Yeah. Anyway, as I say, it raises the whole question of consciousness. Plants can clearly do a lot more than was thought. If you've read, those of you who've got Medicine Beyond and you've read it, you'll have read something quite fascinating, which is if you feed plants water with things like Prozac and Ritalin in it, the growth of the plant all goes to hell. The root part of the plant seems to be the intelligent tip. That's the one that knows what it's doing and is thinking and knows where it's going. I don't know if you know the work of Alfred Korzybski, actually, but he might be worth mentioning at this point. He called plants chemical binding, meaning they are locked into and driven by chemicals. They're looking for nutrients in the environment. Animals he calls space binding, meaning they have the freedom to roam and move about, and they have territories and things like that. They have the concept of space. And humans he called time binding, that humans are probably the only people that understand the concept of time, in the fullest sense. So we're time binding. But plants are just chemical binding. They have very limited movement, but they know what they're looking for. They're looking for certain chemicals. And if you see speeded up plant growth, it looks very deterministic. It does not look random. It just happens. It looks like the plant is going, and then sort of making what appear quite definitely to be deterministic movements if you speed up what they're doing. Of course, they're very slow, but it doesn't mean they're not showing some purpose. Any other questions? So.
You're saying that this music is coming from this plant.
Yes.
If you were to take one side off, it will stop?
I'm touching one electrode. I'm holding the other electrode, so I'm completing the circuit. There is no sound in the machine. There is no music in the machine. It's very important you understand. The machine doesn't do anything. It just translates energy waves from the plant into certain sound frequencies. I can give it different settings to make it sound like a trumpet or a wired banana or something. They're all weird sounds. The one I like is this one, which is orchestral harp. But see, I promise you, I'm touching the one electrode there, I'm touching the other electrode, I'm holding it, and there is no sound just by completing the circuit like that. Yeah, you noticed a tinkle when I took my finger off. But this is very definitely the plant, and she's probably going to get upset for a minute now, interacting with the machine. Okay, are we? Oh gosh, we're early, aren't we? We're actually very early. I think I must have talked too fast. Let's take an early break though, because there's plenty to do after the break. Yeah? So go on. I forgot to tell you about Todd. He's come down with some special organic, super friendly chocolate milkshakes. Except there's no milk in them. There's whey powder. There's no sugar. There's no lactose. I'd like you to try it. I'd like feedback from as much of you guys as possible if we can. It's all free. So if you want to try an organic, specially produced from a very good health food manufacturing company, chocolate milkshake, please go and try one and tell me what you think. I'd like to know, because if these are good and if these are popular, I can probably produce them as a line, Dr. Keith's line in shakes. And go and see Charles and Linda, who have wonderful liquid vitamins. They're going to give you a sample. Everybody gets to taste them. The trouble is, I have trouble taking vitamins because I retch on most of the smell and flavoring of vitamins. But they've come up with a wonderful, delicious formula. It's the only thing I'll now take for the last 3 years. I just take their liquid stuff. Anyway, so make yourself known over there. Come and say hello to the plant. And let's reassemble at 1:45, can we? That gives us 35 minutes. Yeah? Okay? Good.